Today we're gonna be reacting to something stupid and crazy. So let's get into it. If you guys haven't yet subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment what kind of video I should do next.
I don't have no sympathy. I'm sadistic. I really don't care. I'll do it and I'll do it again over and over and over.
This is Jamie Osuna. He's pretty much the embodiment of your stereotypical criminal. Despite only being 31, Jamie has spent almost half of his life in jail. The other half of his life was spent being in and around gang activity, or at least according to Jamie. From a young age, his dad wasn't in the picture. However, some sources claim a stepfather was, but those same sources claim he was tortured by him. If this is the case, those traumatic memories could play a huge role in why Jamie turned out the way he did. But Jamie claims the streets and gang activity
He kind of looks like a girl though, to be honest. Just the way he's sitting and that he looks like a girl, to be honest with you.
raised him, rather than his own mother or his stepfather, which can also play a huge role in what he eventually became.
Osuna is scheduled to be back in court next month for the murder of his cellmate that prosecutors call especially heinous.
Regardless of whether his stepfather tortured him or not, it's clear that violence was also very prevalent during his younger years, as Jamie claimed, and still does to this day, feel numb. He claims that he feels no emotion whatsoever, and because of this he began self-harm, like cutting himself because he believed feeling the pain that hurting yourself causes was better than not feeling anything or any emotion at all. So, even in his younger years, it was clear that Jamie had some serious problems and likely suffered from a mental disorder or condition which
Not mental order. It's mentally stupid. Period. Like cutting yourself. Yeah.
was later identified, but his self-harming behavior only grew once he began to feel numb to the pain of harming himself. So he began harming other animals. He would often kill animals such as wild rabbits or cats, but not in a way that a hunter might. He would quite literally watch these animals suffer because he enjoyed it. He enjoyed knowing that he had the power to kill something and take away their life.
That sounds so evil. Like watching an animal suffer. I could never do that. There's no way I could do that. And for this dude to be able to torture an animal, a cat or a rabbit, I couldn't do it.
Life because he had more power and was stronger than these helpless animals were.
I don't care if you're a lawyer. I don't care if you're a teacher. I don't care if you're a gang member. I don't care if you're my brother or sister. I don't care if you're whoever. It's self-gratification. Since I was a kid, 8, 9 years old, I killed animals. My mom would go to the store. I'll put the cat in the freezer. 15 minutes, let it out, put it in the oven, let it out.
It's hard to look past Jamie's appearance. The man is covered in comic book-like tattoos, which makes him a character, that's for sure. Just through doing this research, I've seen some reports that his choice to cover his face in these tattoos was likely because of his lack of emotion and strive to quote-unquote feel something and stand out or draw attention to him, which is worth keeping in mind, because if this is the case, it means that not every form of self-harm Jamie did was necessarily a violent act, although the majority clearly were, and this was only speculation. However, this is almost everything we know about Jamie's childhood and upbringing, as information like the date he was born is yet to even be public. The only other information available is that Jamie claims to have committed his first murder at 13, but he hasn't said who the victim was, and it was never reported as a crime, so police lean more towards this being a false story. So let's fast forward to when Jamie was in his 20s.
It's not often, even as somebody who prosecutes murderers for a living, that I come across somebody who's just plain evil. If anybody deserves the death penalty, Jamie Osuna does.
As mentioned, Jamie spent a lot of his life in and around gangs, which consequently meant he spent a lot of his life in and out of jail. Considering Jamie was able to get in and out of jail in the first place, it's safe to assume these crimes are smaller and less damaging, or at least a lot smaller and a lot less damaging than what he would go on to commit. One of the last times Jamie would temporarily visit jail, serve his sentence and leave with nothing more than parole actually sparked a step in an almost positive direction. This is as after Jamie left jail he began to attend more social gatherings and parties, and in fact, at one of these parties he met the woman who would go on to marry, Joelle Castellano. There's not much.
To be honest, I feel bad for that lady because one, look at him. Like he's nothing but a joke. He's not. He's the type of person where he belongs in jail or belongs in prison, to be honest with you. And if she's attracted to him, something's wrong. Oh my god.
Much information about Joelle beside the fact that she was 37 years old and a mother of 4 children, so already quite a lot older than Jamie, who was in his early 20s. Joelle's introduction to Jamie was rocky, to say the least. When Jamie first spotted her at this party while she was dancing with another man, this man was someone Jamie didn't know and had likely never even seen before, because Jamie liked the look of Joelle and was already a violent person, as we know. So he got a knife from the kitchen and stabbed this man. Luckily, this unnamed man survived, but this landed Jamie back in prison, serving a year-long sentence due to a clear violation of his parole. But this would by no way get in between their blooming relationship, as Jamie began writing to Joelle from prison, and when he finally served his year-long sentence, he agreed to picking him up from prison where they would spend their night in a hotel room. It's unknown why Joelle would get into a relationship with Jamie, especially since their first interaction together was literally him stabbing another man, but some doctors have speculated that Jamie was given the benefit of the doubt a lot in his life, which is why certain events occurred in his life, which still seems like a terrible explanation to date someone like Jamie. After this interaction, Joelle found out she was pregnant and the two would shortly get married and welcome their first and only child into the world. Things were clearly looking up, but not for long. Jamie would begin getting into hard drugs such as meth, which only increased his violent
Don't tell me he's gonna kill it. He killed his own child too.
behavior, and he began becoming much more violent to those around him and allegedly to his wife now too. As you could have guessed, his violent outbreaks would eventually lead to the breakdown of his marriage, and he would become much less present within the life of his child, as he would only really see them when Joelle was comfortable seeing him. There's been no reports as to whether the two got a divorce, or if anything was legally decided in regards to the custody of the child, but it's fair to say if these documents were put in place, they wouldn't really change much considering they acted divorced already, but it's worth mentioning they did not lose contact with one another. There's not much information available between now and the next event, but it's fair to assume Jamie spent a lot of time doing what he always was, and that was getting involved in gangs, taking drugs, and getting into trouble. But one night in November 2011, Joelle received unspecified communication from Jamie stating to be out on the lookout for a murder case on the news. Joelle, knowing what Jamie was like, called the police in fear of him actually doing something horrible to somebody. The police didn't pay much attention to this phone call at first. It was only when the report of a dead body being found in a hotel room near Jamie's location they began to take things more seriously. Yvette Pina was a 37-year-old mother of 6 who Jamie had never met, not had any pre-existing relationships with. He simply labeled her as an acquaintance. But he had just murdered her with 3 weapons, 2 knives and a pair of scissors. All 3 weapons were found at the crime scene, and it wasn't long before Jamie was found as the primary suspect, arrested and charged with murder and given a life sentence. During his trial period, he first denied, but soon after admitted to the media that he was statistic, a Satan worshipper, and that he tortured her and had done this to get a rush, which again circles back around to Jamie's want for power that we witnessed in his earlier years.
Why does people have to kill other people? That's one thing I want to know is why? What's the point of it?
Because Jamie pleaded guilt, he managed to avoid the death sentence. During Jamie's time in jail, he got into a lot of fights and even reportedly stabbed someone, which landed him in a unique position. He was no longer allowed to have a cellmate or have any other cellmates visit his cell at any point. He wasn't allowed any contact visit from outsiders out of fear that Jamie may become violent, as he'd already proven he could and would. It was at this point that Jamie was mentally evaluated and diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder and a type of schizophrenia had been speculated, I think none of which came as a surprise to any detectives or investigators looking into Jamie's case.
I did sadistically, premeditatedly, deliberately tortured and murdered Yvette Pena.
A short while had passed, and Jamie seemed to be much less violent and much more easygoing around police guards and other cellmates. And although the ban on him having any cellmates visit or stay with him inside of his cell was not lifted, Jamie was given a cellmate anyway. His name was Luis Romero, a 44-year-old man who was charged for second-degree murder during a 1992 shooting which ended in one of the victims unfortunately losing their life. Louis, however, had served 27 years already and had just been transferred prison as he was coming to the end of his sentence. This meant that Jamie's cellmate would only be a temporary one, giving him less time to act on any violent urges, and on top of this, the guards were meant to be doing frequent checks on Jamie's cell to be completely visible for any guard to look into at all times to ensure nothing bad could happen. Unfortunately, one evening these checks were not done. Jamie had put a white sheet from his bed to cover his cell and with a razor blade slowly began torturing his cellmate, Louis. He did this for quite some time before eventually decapitating Louis' head, reportedly removing any individual body parts like fingers, lungs, and even his heart. He had slit Louis' mouth from corner to corner to look like the Joker, and when he was eventually caught, he was wearing parts of Louis' body as a necklace. He was proud that he had done this. Jamie had landed himself back in court.
That is some kind of satanic. Well, not satanic. That's just some evil and all that. And plus, I've been to jail before, and it's not fun. It's cold, and it's a really small cell. It's not fun once. It's not even fun. I've been there twice, 2 or 3 times, and it wasn't fun. You get a little cell. Food was awful. You get like a rotten egg. Oh, sorry. Man, it's, oh my god. And this dude brutally murders 2 people so far, 2 or 3 people so far. Oh my god.
It's clear he has no remorse whatsoever for not 1 but 2 killings, and to be honest, it's extremely worrying that the police would even consider letting Jamie have a cellmate, especially considering he was a high-risk prisoner and he'd been caught with makeshift weapons in the past. Luckily, he hadn't managed to use them. But this begs the question, how did Jamie even get a razor in the first place? Someone that was known for hurting himself and others should not have access to a razor, especially if you're giving him a cellmate for the first time since he entered prison from a murder charge. Because of all these reasons, investigators into this case and questioned the morals of the police guards at the time, and a lot of the general public referred to them as corrupt and requesting a lawsuit be filed against the prison. Jamie, during his court appearance, reportedly was interrupting the judge and shouting, "I'm guilty." And because of this, the court hearing was cut short as they did not believe Jamie was fit to trial. However, he's already serving a life sentence without the option of parole. As for Louis' family, they were expecting to see him return home in the coming months, but the news of his death was heartbreaking for them. Louis, despite being so close to the end of his trial, would never get to see the outside world, his family, or friends.
He was eligible for parole soon, and my mother and my sister and I always hoped to see him once back home, but, you know.
I hope she's not talking about the dude that brutally murdered those people.
That hope is dead.
And it doesn't look like the family members themselves are supportive of the prison either.
There was 2 phone calls. The first one was when they just basically they let us know that, you know, Luis had passed, and they informed us of, you know, how to recover his body. And then the second phone call was to ask for a money order that they wanted for us to recover his belongings.
The fact the majority of the information they're finding out about their own family passing away is because of the news is heartbreaking. The fact that they only received 2 phone calls from the prison and one of them was asking them to pay a bill in regards to Louis' body is even more heartbreaking. As a prison, you should be offering mental support to any family going through this.
To be honest with you, if he did die, thank God, there'd be less one dumbass in this world that's killing everybody for no reason.
Especially considering the situation, but the prison housing Jamie, one of America's most notorious killers that should be well versed on how to deal with a situation like this, offered them nothing but a couple of phone calls. As for a recent update, Jamie is still in prison where he will remain for the rest of his life. There have been no details as to a further court date for a real trial to find Jamie guilty. Unfortunately, despite the fact that he's clearly guilty, his plea in the original trial cannot be used as he was determined unfit to plea. As for Jamie's family, his wife and child, there have been no updates, but it is assumed they are living somewhere in America.
Right there. He can't, except the tattoos on his face and all that, but he looks like a really nice guy. Deep down, he looks like a really nice guy. But now what you hear is what he did and all that. Let me see. Hold on. What was his name?
Especially considering the situation, but the prison housing Jamie.
Okay. Let's go back.
in the coming months, but the news of his death was heartbreaking for them. Luis, despite being so close to the end of his trial, would never get to see the outside world, his family, or friends.
He was eligible for parole soon, and my mother and my sister and I always hoped to see him once back home, but that hope is dead.
And it doesn't look like the family members themselves are supportive of the prison either.
There was 2 phone calls. The first one was when they just basically they let us know that Luis had passed, and they informed us of how to recover his body. And then the second phone call was to ask for a money order that they wanted.
I want Louise, because I thought she said Jamie for a second. I don't know who Louise is.
For us to recover his belongings.
The fact the majority of the information they're finding out about their own family passing away is because of the news is heartbreaking. The fact that they only received 2 phone calls from the prison and one of them was asking them to pay a bill in regards to Louis' body is even more heartbreaking. As a prison, you should be offering mental support to any family going through this, especially considering the situation, but the prison housing Jamie, one of America's most notorious killers that should be well versed on how to deal with a situation like this, offer them nothing but a couple of phone calls. As for a recent update, Jamie is still in prison where he will remain for the rest of his life. There have been no details as to a further court date for a real and the way he chose to cut Louis. He has also texted people to quote, "Why so serious" in the past, which is a clear reference from the Joker.
Now that shit there is all messed up. Like, you going to kill someone, they deserve to get a death penalty, to be honest with you. It is just stupid, to be honest with you. Like, oh my god. Like, why? Why would you murder an innocent person? Especially, and then you have a child, and then you still continue to murder someone. Oh my god. But if you guys like this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notifications, and let me know in the comments down below what you guys think, what other video I should do, because that is kind of messed up, to be honest with you. Luckily he's not my brother, because, well, even my brother's still in prison, but that's kind of pathetic. I've only been to jail 2 or 3 times, but they're all that cases has been dropped when I was younger, and the judge knew I didn't do it, so anyways, you guys stay safe. I'm gonna get off here. Get you guys later. Deuces.